Good evening, everyone. Depending on which clock you're looking at, that one says 5 after 5, but mine says 5:30, and it's an Apple Watch, so you know it's right. Welcome to the regular session of the Danville City Commission for this evening, Monday, May the 13th, and I believe we have a quorum, minus Commissioner Sears, who is MIA, but I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't come in somewhere during the evening. So I'll call us to order anyway and ask that we be led in prayer by Commissioner Denise Terry.
Thank you. Please join me in prayer. God Almighty, we thank you for the gift of life and the opportunity to serve the people of our city. We ask that you help us to act with character and conviction, to listen with understanding and goodwill, and to speak with charity and restraint. Give us a spirit of service and guide us to be the leaders your people need. Help us to listen with humility, open minds, and spirits. Renew our spirits to appreciate the joy of helping to build a community worthy of the human person. In your goodness and love, amen.
Amen. Thank you. I'd like to ask Joe Marie Lammy to come join us and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance this evening. Here's Rick.
Rick is here.
All right. You just don't ever know, do you, Joe Marie?
I tried to save you.
Oh, you're good. You're good. You're good.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, ma'am. Wait a minute. Give her a pen. She gets a pen. Right. Commission, you have had since Friday the agenda in front of you. Unless I hear otherwise, I will assume it meets with your approval. We'll move right into the section called Hear the Public. This is the public's opportunity to address any subject that is on tonight's agenda. We will address any subject later on that is not on tonight's agenda. So, microphone is yours for anyone.
25 words or less.
Seeing none, we'll move right on into item 1. And this is a momentous occasion. This will be the introduction of the new Parks and Rec Director. And I don't know if there's somebody on Parks and Rec that wants to make the introduction, or if you want me just to come right on. Yes, sir. Thank you, Bryce.
I'm Bryce Perry, as you all know. I'm the chairman of the board for Parks and Rec. We did come to our decision. John Bell's in the back. He came to us from St. Louis, Missouri. As I said at the joint meeting a few weeks ago, we're really excited to have him. He has an outstanding background in parks throughout his whole career, extensive experience with implementing master plans. I think you all have seen his background. I don't need to go into it too deep, but you can read that for yourselves. But I can speak to just the short time that I've known him throughout the process, how wonderful of a man he is. So not only are we getting a great man to lead us, but we also have the background to go with it. So looking forward to what he's going to do in the community, how he's going to grow our Parks and Rec system to get it to, as I've said before, top notch for communities that are our size across the state. So if you guys don't have any questions, John, if you have anything to say, that's fine. If not,
I like the if not part.
Yeah.
Great build up and high standards that I have to now live up to. So I look forward to being here. I came down here. Yes, it's going to be a personal and professional change for me. I look forward to the opportunity, look forward to the challenges. And like Bryce said, look forward to moving Danville and Boyle County into, making advancements in Parks and Recreation for the communities and provide advanced service and advanced programs for the community.
Very good. Thank you.
Excellent. We were at a thing this morning talking about economic development, and they flashed an aerial of the facility in Elizabethtown, which you may not be familiar with.
I am.
But the point of that was it is a major economic engine. for those folks. And I think a bit of salesmanship, which we've been trying to do now for about a couple of years, as to it's more than just a park, it's more
Yes.
than just a recreation, it's an economic development tool. And so you get that, and I understand that, and I appreciate your coming in and casting your vote of confidence by moving your family here.
I welcome that.
And anything that we can do to assist you, either individually or as a commission or as a city government, you know our door's open.
Absolutely. And Parks and Recreation it is a service, but yes, it can be a leader in the economic development. Parks can be for the community, but also, drive individuals and residents outside of the community as a destination point to come. And if we foster those developments, those parks, then, it can become a destination for individuals to come and visit the community, and then therefore expand what their visit is, not just the park system, but throughout the community through the other services that we have to offer.
Here's the loaded question.
Right out of the gate.
What attracted you to this job?
Challenge.
You got one.
Very easy.
You're getting your money's worth.
The answer is easy. Challenge. It's very easy in any job to get complacent. I am not one that'll shy away from challenges. So I welcome that, but also the fact that the master plan hasn't been completed. You have a destination. Now you have to develop the roadmap to get to that destination. And so there's challenges that encompass that. So I look forward to those challenges, working with not only, this group, the magistrates of the county, but then also the residents to figure out what their goals are, their desires are, and then encompass my experiences and my beliefs as to the best way to get to those goals. So mine is not to come in and establish my goals for the community, but to take the community's goals and just develop that roadmap and how to get there.
Music to my ears.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
I just have one thing I want to add. On behalf, I know this is a long drawn-out process for reasons that we won't go in here to tonight. I just want to, on behalf of the board, say that we appreciate the support we've got from the commissioners and you specifically, Mayor, throughout the whole process. And we're glad, we feel comfortable, very excited what the decision that we made, and we're looking forward to moving on. So,
Well,
you, Bryce.
and I want to follow up on that. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for your leadership. Thank you for the work that your committee put in. Unless you've done that kind of search, you don't know how much time it takes and some of the anxiety involved. And it looks to me like you did a really nice job here.
yes, sir.
You hit the ball out of the park, no pun intended.
I want to say, John, welcome, and I think you'll be working with a really good board that the magistrates and the city commissioners have put together for you. We're real pleased with this board right now, so go get them.
Anything else? All right.
Thank you, guys.
Look forward to it. Item 2 is a proclamation for Police Officer Memorial Week. Chief, I don't know who you want to.
Go ahead, David. You, Cody, step up there and say the proclamation.
Smile. Smile. Okay, I want my side right there. This is for the National Police Officer Appreciation Week from May 12th through the 18th, 2019. Whereas the Congress and President of the United States has designated May 15th as Peace Officers Memorial Day and the week in which May 15th falls as National Police Week. And whereas the members of the law enforcement agency of the City of Danville play an essential role in safeguarding the rights and freedoms of the City of Danville and its citizens. And whereas it is important that all citizens know and understand the duties, responsibilities, hazards, and sacrifices of their law enforcement agency, and that members of our law enforcement agency recognize their duty to serve the people by safeguarding life and property, by protecting them against violence and disorder, and by protecting the innocent against deception and the weak against oppression. And whereas the men and women of the law enforcement agency of the city of Danville unceasingly provide a vital public service, now therefore be it resolved that Mayor G. Michael Parris and the city commissioners of the city of Danville on this 13th day of May 2019 do hereby call upon all citizens of Danville and upon all patriotic, civic, and education organizations to observe the week of May 12th through the 18th, 2019 as Police Officer Appreciation Week, with appropriate ceremonies and observances in which all of our people may join in commemorating law enforcement officers, past and present, who by their faithful and loyal devotion to their responsibilities have rendered a dedicated service to their communities and, in doing so, have established for themselves an enviable and enduring reputation for preserving the rights and securities of all citizens. I further call upon all citizens of Danville to observe May 17th as Peace Officers Memorial Day in honor of those law enforcement officers who, through their courageous deeds, have made the ultimate sacrifice in service to their community or have become disabled in the performance of their duty. And let us recognize and pay respect to the survivors of our fallen heroes in a ceremony at Bellevue Cemetery on May 17th at 3 p.m. in the afternoon. Thank you, sir, for your service.
Thank you. Thank you,
and
sir.
yours, sir.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Do I hear a motion that we accept the proclamation as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Terry, Commissioner Cardle. Any discussion? The only comment I'll make is that our police officers are fantastically dedicated individuals. And you find out when you have debriefs like we did today on a certain situation. And you really understand at that moment when things are happening, these people, they have the training and they exercise that training without hesitation. And I think can't say enough of what you guys do, and ladies too. No further comments. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Item 3 is a presentation by Mr. Dave Newman, who is with Bravura on our much anticipated fire station. Dave?
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. The Police Officers Memorial is kind of a good segue into an element of the design here that I'll present to you in a minute. So tonight I want to share with you the design for the new Central Fire Station. That's Fire Station number 1 in Danville. Again, my name is Dave Newman. I'm with Bravura Architects. Part of my team includes David Onquist, who's our local structural engineer, and then Shrout Tate Wilson Engineers will be doing the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing engineering for the project. So just to go back over how we got here, this has been a long process, started over 2.5 years ago probably. We began by evaluating the existing Station 1, built in the 60s, completed an extensive report on its condition. That led to a search for a new site, actually, for the fire station, and we evaluated several options, finally selected one. That process continued in meetings with the fire department staff, programming a new building, which included visits to neighboring fire stations, some conceptual layouts, and then now we've landed on schematic design, which is where we are now. which includes a developed floor plan and building elevations and a rendering, which I think you're going to be excited to see. So after we move past this stage, we'll move into full contract documents and specifications, which will lead ultimately to the bidding and construction of the new station. So again, let me go back. And 2 years ago, almost to the day, we completed the building assessment. We looked carefully at the exterior, interior, the architectural, structural, mechanical, electrical systems of the building, looked into some of the code deficiencies of the building. And we also studied the floor plans to see what spaces needed improvement, upgrades, expansion, what inefficiencies existed, and there were many, of course, as you know. And ultimately, we decided not to expand the building on its present site, not to try to upgrade it, and instead move forward with a new state-of-the-art facility. So again, that led to site planning, and there were several sites in the area in Danville that were considered, but we decided to focus in downtown Danville for a couple good reasons. Here's where we are today. There's the existing fire station, and we decided to move across the street next to this building. And again, we did like this location. Its proximity to City Hall, for example, and the police department provides a certain civic importance, logistics, and then also its location on Main Street, I think provides a community connection, which I thought was very important. So to zoom in on the site, we looked at different arrangements of the pieces on the site. It's a challenging site in many ways, but we think it's workable. So this is the arrangement we landed on that we liked the best. And you'll see that the apparatus bay where the trucks are is off to the left there, the red block. And then the living spaces and administration wing on the right next to City Hall. And what this did was it formed a courtyard in between the two buildings, which would be landscaped. The dormitories and the administrative offices would view onto this courtyard. And it also created, if I can get the laser to work here, created the opportunity for a plaza out in front here, which we're calling this the First Responders Memorial Plaza. It's linked directly to the City Hall Plaza up here and connects via some steps, we think, that would link the two plazas together instead of just ending the way it does right here on the east side currently. So that site plan became, that site plan became this site plan, fully developed. It's a little over an acre in total area. We get about 20 spaces for fire department staff. In the rear of the site, there's room enough for a storage maintenance building, plus a generator, plus the new antenna. If I can get this to work again here. Here's the large apron off of Main Street, where the trucks are in this apparatus bay here. The service yard in the back. And here's this landscaped courtyard I was mentioning here, and finally the plaza out in front off of Main Street. So moving on to the floor plans, a more detailed look at the spaces. Again, we had numerous meetings with fire department staff, and so the trend right now, and Ken will back me up on this, is that you try to establish a hot and cold side to your station. Because of the hazardous materials that come back on the trucks, that are in the gear, try to make a clear demarcation between the hot areas on the left here, your trucks and gear are stored, and the living spaces and administration on this side. So the right-hand side of the building here is 2 stories, and this would be 1.5 stories, which results in a fairly compact design, which you'll see in the elevations. So here's the main entrance to the building down here off of Main Street, off of the plaza. And you come into a nice day-lit, open two-story lobby, which has direct links to the training room, which we see being a community center room. It's not only for staff. We have an outdoor patio that can be used too for certain functions. And then beyond that is the fire department administration wing, and then in the back is a private fitness center, and they also have an outdoor plaza there. Gear area and so forth, service areas here. We also feature what probably will be a 3-story stair tower, which will double as a training space, both interior and exterior of the stair tower. Second floor, again, this is above the administration offices, is the living quarters for fire crews. We've got 10 private dormitories, very generous. And then their living spaces up here include the day room, kitchen, dining, and they get their own outdoor deck here too. 2 fire poles down into the lead you down into the apparatus bay, and then a service mezzanine here where they can also do some indoor training. Now, through a basement plan, because as we developed the floor plans, we saw the potential, at least, for basement space, and ultimately linking the basement of the police headquarters over here on this side via a tunnel into the fire station, which you could see the advantages of that. Ultimately, the basement space could be another training room, perhaps even someday a joint operations center. So we're looking into that option now. So I'll move into the building elevations. Like any architect, we look for inspiration from both new stations and traditional stations. Some of the elements that say fire station to us, the brick, the towers, the doors. Then we also looked around downtown Danville for inspiration, some of the landmarks here, buildings along Main Street, again, the brick colors, the cornice lines, kind of thing. So I'll quickly run through these elevations. This is the front south elevation. It's a fairly compact design, as I pointed out, because we didn't want to overwhelm City Hall over here. This is the main apparatus bay with a big signature arch over top of the 3 truck bays. It's glazed, so it allows a lot of natural light into the truck area, which you enjoy. The archway is balanced by a tower here. That's that tower on the lobby, in the lobby of the building, which is also the main stairway that leads you up to the 2nd floor. The entry doors are recessed back in to create a little porch in front of the entrance doors there. The rear elevation, again, just showing the 3 bays leading out into the service yard. This will be the west elevation facing the Orange Leaf Center there. Again, showing some tall glass up above the apparatus bay to give natural light into there. And then finally, the east elevation, which would face City Hall, showing the administrative office windows on the ground floor and the dormitory windows up above. Here's the deck off of the dining room, and the patio there off of the conference/training center. So again, we like the composition of masses, of brick colors, and differentiate different forms of the building, the different uses of the building. Will include traditional brick details, traditional stone details for cornices, bands, and other decorative elements. So, moving to the rendering. There's the exterior rendering, what we think the building will look like. So if you were standing across Main Street looking back towards City Hall, again with the apparatus bays on the left and the main entrance, public entrance, and the stair tower on your right. You'll also see the plaza there, that First Responders Memorial Plaza there, which, by the way, with the addition of the piece from the World Trade Center that Danville just acquired, we think will be the centerpiece of that new plaza. So moving forward, the demolition of the existing buildings on the site next door will begin here shortly. We'll need to do some soils testing in that area before we can really get into structural design. We're wrapping up the preliminary construction cost estimate, and then we'll move right into one of the technical details and specifications, and of course the structural and mechanical design. So at this point, we figure we'll have drawings ready for bid within 90 days, 90 to 120 days, let's say. So that concludes my presentation tonight.
Thank you, sir.
Can I ask a quick question?
Absolutely.
I noticed the new fire station will pretty much almost adjoin the city hall, and right now there's a driveway between the two. What's going to happen there as far as
Yeah,
that goes?
so I could flip back real quick to that site plan, and what we decided to do was create kind of a campus between the two buildings and eliminate that drive that exists right now. This is where you're talking about in here, and turn that into a green space rather than a paved drive. It's about the same width as it is now. And then the entrance drive would be on this side, on the west side, and that will be jointly used by the police shift
Okay, there's that.
as well as fire trucks coming in and out. There is an access, I'll mention that quickly, to the north onto Broadway through that existing alleyway.
Thank you.
So,
Similar question. So we're coming in off of Main Street, and of course, it's just a schematic at this point, but so is it, are your trucks turning in the back and coming through?
that's right, yeah. So one of the priorities was to have a pass-through fire station rather than just a single side. Because right now, the building's too small to really negotiate the large trucks, but that was originally the idea there too, where you have doorways on both sides of your building, and so you don't have to back in off of Main Street all the time. So we've done a lot of studies and have determined that we do have adequate turning radius here to get the largest ladder truck into that last bay. Of course, smaller trucks won't have an issue, and then smaller trucks could have the opportunity to come in from Broadway if they needed to and come straight down into that bay. So there's enough maneuvering room in that back area, that service yard, to get the trucks in and out. Yep.
Will that entrance off Broadway be secured?
Yes, Mayor. We talked about that a little bit ago, that there would be a secure gate right here, right at the end of the property.
Any other questions, thoughts? Where's Ken? Ken, talk to us. What do you like about it? What don't you like about it?
Well, let me just say, we worked really hard and long with Dave on this project, going from from our first contact is saying, how do you want programmed? What do you see for the department? And I was given a 50-year station with 20 years no touch. That was my first goal, which is why you see such a building like you do, so that we don't have to worry about it like we have next door. And from that point forward, we've had numerous meetings and visits to other fire stations, getting the feel of what we need here and what would look appropriate in town. And this is the end work that we've run. Yeah, it's all right there on the paper from everything. I'm more than glad to answer any questions you have about the design, but we programmed it to work so that we could grow. We would not be stuck in a footprint that doesn't work. And something that the community can be proud of and not, and be functional.
And you say 50-year, 20-year no touch. What does that mean?
For 50 years, well, next door is a 50-year station.
Right.
It's outlived its use. No touch, 20-year no touch means that you don't have to do any major renovations or changes to the structure. What you've planned and what you have will make you last 20 years without having to do any additions or changes, major changes.
Give kudos to both of you all for thinking about connecting the police department to fire department underground. I think that's really good idea.
Yeah, when we got that close, we realized, why not? That's a benefit, that we could use for future.
I really wanted to ask the police chief, does this affect your all's pathway and transports and access to the backside that you use? Is this going to work for you all too?
Yeah, we tried to work together to, we were involved with a design from the beginning and kind of held a gun to Ken's head and told him, it's our way or no way.
Okay, I
Yeah,
just
we-
wanted to make sure everybody's on the same
We
page.
did bring them in first time to get their feelings, since they are going to be our neighbors.
Yes,
And we want to make sure it worked for them too.
okay.
Now, I know this is a stupid question, but I'm going to make sure that not only does the new fire truck fit, but that there's still some additional elevation in the event we get a new fire truck after that in 20 years.
Those doors you see in the photo, or the rendering, are 14-foot tall doors with 19-foot clear ceiling height. So there will be no problems there.
Famous last word.
That's right. As far as the foreseeable future, I do not see fire trucks gaining much more height than that.
That's all I got.
Looks really good.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it.
Dave, thank you much.
Thank you.
Next is the banner request from the Brass Band Festival. I think, Mr. Scott, that's the same banner they put up for how many years?
At least several consecutively. Mr. Bill Bandy, the executive director of the festival, was traveling tonight and could not attend. He asked that I convey his request to the City Commission to hang that banner in its usual location. And the dates to be hung would be before you meet again, which is why he's asking me to make that presentation, be hung on May 27th through June the 14th. That would give about 2 weeks advance publicity to the festival prior to its actually being held, and about 5 days afterwards.
Okay.
So it's recommended. The dates are clear. As we did last year, I think there's one other event, the Bill Pollum race, that typically runs over the same time, so we sort of have to move it down a bit when we put up the Bill Pollum race banner, but we've done that for a number of years.
Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you, sir. Say, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, ma'am. Discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Item 5 is the approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. Chair will entertain a motion to accept or amend.
I move for approval of the minutes as presented. the meeting of April 22nd, 2019.
Thank you, Commissioner Cardle. Is there a second?
Second.
There's 2 meetings there.
And April 25th.
And April 20th.
I stand corrected. So noted.
right.
So noted.
And somebody, I'm not going to name any names, said April 22nd, 2109. That's,
Who said
might want
that?
to change that. That's it.
Any further comments? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Item 6 is the reappointment of Ethics Board member.
I'll offer a motion to recommend Mr. James Hunt be reappointed to the Ethics Board. And I'm assuming this is Mr. James Hunt Senior.
I was going to say old or new. You said senior, junior.
Well, he's not senior, but he's old.
Second.
Mr. Hunt, I understand you lobbied heavily for this. Any, Chair will entertain a motion.
Got one.
Got one. Is there a second?
Yes.
All
Second
right,
here.
all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Item 7, likewise, is the reappointment of the Sister Cities Board member. And I would like to, this is actually one that we should have done before, and it was a bit of a oversight on our part, and that is Georgia DeRugio to be reappointed Sister Cities Commission.
I'll offer a motion.
Thank you, sir.
Second.
Mr. DeRugio.
Thank you. Commissioner Atkins, Commissioner Cardle, discussion. Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Item 8 is a request regarding the Meadow Lane Cemetery. Mr. Hahn?
Yes, sir.
Floor is yours.
Usually when I come, I'm looking for something. But this time, I'm giving something away.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. We'll be determining what you're doing here.
My staff is behind me, so if y'all have any questions, ask them. I guess what we'd like to know is, y'all are gonna accept our gift that's presented tonight.
Which is?
The Meadow Lane Cemetery.
Oh, I didn't know. Okay.
The Meadow Lane Cemetery, and I'm assuming all of its appropriate upkeep. Okay.
Except for we got a maintenance man too, you know, he'll be down there doing bits and pieces.
Does he know that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It's all in the plan. And probably some more of us will be down there too, you know.
Mr. Scott, do you have any comment on this?
Well, we've had staff discussions. I presume, Mr. Hunn, there's no dowry that goes with that gift of the cemetery to
No,
help
just what you
maintain.
see, you know, you get what you see.
We believe it would be appropriate for the city to accept and receive, but we have certain title and other legal work to do before we're ready to present that to the city commission, but we think it's a good idea to do.
Why don't we ask Mr. Hunt to tell us about the significance of this cemetery and about the size and whatever else he might want to share, or somebody from his somebody from his highly paid staff.
We believe that it is to be the oldest African-American cemetery in Boyle County, maybe probably in the state, early, you know. I don't know if Mr. Anchorage is on here or not, but it was elected, wasn't taken care of, I guess, since the 50s.
Yeah.
Or longer, or maybe before. The last burial was in 1952, I believe it was. But it was 40-some years before that I know that anything was done. In 1992, when Donna Feckner was the Clean City Director, she got a bunch of people, Timberland, North Point Training Center, and Dark Lodge to clean up that. And it was a yearly thing for Timberland, so every spring that we would go in there and try to clean up that cemetery. until here lately when the Central Kentucky African American Cemetery Association started working on it, and 2 or 3 other things. We did Shelby's, they have did one in Shelby City, Meadow Lanes, Lincoln County, and one in Garrett County. But, you know, so few of us, it's hard for us to maintain all of them. So we got the jail in Lincoln County to do Gibbon Cemetery in Lincoln County. So that's,
When was it kind of rediscovered?
pardon?
When was this cemetery somewhat rediscovered?
I think 92.
92.
Yeah. And there've been several groups who've gone out,
Since-
center students included, that have tried to maintain it. He didn't mention the fact that there have been identifiable burials there from several Civil War soldiers who
3.
were probably former slaves, and some very historical markers have been identified. And you've identified how many graves thus far?
I'm not sure.
40? Okay.
And then there's one grave of the 369, the Harlem Hellfighters.
Of the what?
Harlem Hellfighters, all African American division during World War I.
Huh.
Buried there.
We go.
And I guess the other thing I'm going to force Mr. Hunt to tell us is that your organization has clear title and deed to the cemetery at this time.
Well, we don't have a deed, but we have
Title?
schematic of it. I wanna say. We have title actually title of
But you all own it, so you can give it away, right?
it. Well, I guess you could consider that. You know,
Well, that's been the issue for me for several years, is that
Yeah.
no one ever claimed ownership
We-
to it
we-
to give it to us.
We
So-
have ownership of it now. That's why
Good,
I want
okay.
to give it to y'all. So
Well,
y'all know it.
I'm just trying to help get the word out to the public about what you all have done so we can clear all this up, so.
So we like
It's
to
a good
tell them
thing.
that we need some help too
Yes, sir.
for other cemeteries in the area.
Mr. Scott, I'm assuming since this is a request, no action is necessary until you all complete your specifications, et cetera?
That would be our recommended and preferred path. I think our general counsel, or city attorney rather, would need to guide you on the documents that you would need to approve.
I'm going to ask the commission, would it be safe to say to Mr. Hun that we are open to working this out?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir. And thanks to your
Should we-
committee members.
Should we make a motion to direct staff to continue their investigation, or to let it go with common
That's
consensus?
fine, that's fine.
Make that motion.
Yeah, I move that we direct staff to continue this research process so that this acceptance of this historical property can be complete and it becomes part of the city cemetery program.
Thank you, Commissioner Atkins. How about a second?
Second?
Commissioner Cottle, discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, motion carries. Item 9 is the code enforcement report. One, Bridget Lester.
Good evening. We have before you the report for the month of April. We are down one officer because we're waiting to fill that position for Mr. Broach's retirement. But we had a total of inspections and activities and complaints of 31 for the month of April. Our business licenses went way up for the month. Commissioner Series, we're at 52, and we brought in a total of $1,300. We do not have a parking report in there because our parking software is down, so I could not run that report for you. We did renew all but 3 of our alcohol licenses that were expiring in April, and 2 of those businesses closed, and one of them decided not to renew. So, but we got everyone else's license renewed, so that kept us very busy. And we added to the condemnation report to give you a little bit more information that you had requested in the past. So hopefully that's helpful. And I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have.
I have one question.
Yes, sir.
I was approached as hired again, and you've not been able to twist his arm and get him to come back again. So the question is, you're gonna have to hire 2 or 3 or 4 people to replace Officer Broach?
Well, we're trying to carry that torch between all of us, but yeah, he's a hard act to follow.
Irreplaceable.
We miss him.
Bridget, I like this condemned report, their top 10 here. Not everybody gets the privilege to see this, so if you want to elaborate on it at all, the work that you are doing, I may just summarize, your top 6, there's action happening. There's action happening on all 10, but really, really positive on the top 6, and I think that that's great.
And a lot of times that is the case, is we let the owner know that it's not up to code and we start working with them. It doesn't always mean that something's got to happen to the house more serious than that, but we're more about compliance and education and helping them work through that. Like the house on 511 Russell Street, we're trying to work with that owner, but we had that house is condemnable, with the fire that happened down there, which was a sad situation for them. But we're working with the property owner, as we do with other ones, to try and help that situation and help them along. And we can work with those timelines. The officers have discretion to work with those as well.
Yeah, I think it's important to, once again, you've got your top 2 total renovations, so the pressure we put on that has really gone positive. And then as you go down the list, you're seeing exterior renovation, and it's really looking good. And some of the other things that I think the public would like to know is you get down to, Mr. So-and-so's in a nursing home. So it's a difficult thing. It's a difficult thing to try to figure it out, but you're trying to do that, and I think that's good.
Yes. And we work with the city manager on those situations and try to decide what's the best route to take and when to move and when to wait a little while longer. So it's very good. And we just approved in the DAHB meeting the front entrance to that 311 West Main Street. So that's going to be an interesting change to that you'll start seeing as they're finishing it up, because they have a tenant supposed to be coming in the 1st of June. So, some exciting things happening in downtown.
It'll be exciting, yeah.
Any more questions? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Item 10 is a zone change recommendation at 707 Old Shakertown Road. Mr. Hunter.
Thank you. I'll keep this short, but walk you through the request. I'm assuming all the commissioners got the staff report and the color exhibits. The Planning Commission had a hearing on April 24th to rezone 4.190 acres at 707 Old Shakertown Road. The request was to go from GRA, or what we used to call R1 back in the day, and agriculture, oddly enough, to what we call neighborhood classification, conservation classification, which is NCC. And the NCC zoning district allows single-family development, duplexes, and/or multifamily development. What the applicants were proposing to do initially was build as many as 85 townhomes on this property. That application came in January and was tabled. The Planning Commission decided they'd like to see a traffic study submitted to evaluate the traffic impact. So the application was tabled in January, then formally withdrawn in March, then refiled again in April once the traffic study was done. When it came back to us the second time, it was still an application to show 67 townhomes. So the concept plan that you have in your packet is a little confusing because it actually shows 62 townhomes, but they committed to 67 to give themselves some wiggle room. After a pretty good debate at the Planning Commission, the developer, based on concerns of the Planning Commission and even some of the analysis based on the traffic study, committed to no more than 51 townhomes or apartments on this property. So the concept plan you have now is not really accurate because, again, they committed to just 51 units that would be developed on this property. The front row of buildings was basically discussed to be eliminated because one of the concerns that was brought up that no one on the Planning Commission was a big fan of seeing the back end of apartments along a street front when you have other building orientations that face forward. So by kind of eliminating that front row of buildings, the developer made some additional commitments that on page 2 of your staff report changed. So again, no more than 51. They guaranteed there would still be the public parking, guest parking in the middle of the site plan, and the front row of buildings would be eliminated or redesigned so no building orientations would be to the rear or rear of the buildings facing on the street front. Before we got into the details, though, of the zone change, the applicant had to revise the future land use map As you guys know, the future land use map's the basis on how we look at zone changes. Initially, this future land use map showed all of this area to be single-family development or low density. So the applicant made a formal request in January to amend the flume from low density to moderate density. And moderate density allows the development to be single-family duplexes or multifamily from 5 units to 16 units an acre. So it gives the developer flexibility on the unit types, but you can't go over a density cap of 16 units to the acre. That's new verbiage in the comprehensive plan as of last summer, where density-based land use categories as opposed to single-family, duplex, et cetera. So they did make that flume amendment in January, and that was successful, and then they tabled the zone change based on the traffic study and came back later. The traffic study was submitted in your packet and really showed no impact. The developer studied from Lexington Avenue at the traffic light on down Shakertown Road, Old Shakertown Road, and studied all those entrances and showed that this development makes minimal to no impact on the road. There was some debate on that too, a little bit, back and forth, but the traffic study was submitted by AGE and your city engineer reviewed it. It was in line with the requirements of what we want to see in the traffic study, and again, showed little to no impact. A little bit of, the way the developer's engineer stated it, basically one more car might have to sit at the light if you're going south towards Lexington Avenue, that possibly one more car in the peak hour scenario may have to sit through the light as opposed to the number of cars that would cycle through that light in one light change. Still, most of the cars, it takes 2 light changes to get through it. At peak time, it'd be one more car would be the addition. It's all engineer stuff. Who knows about all that stuff? But it's in the back, and that's what it says. In the staff report, again, the conditions were on page 2 with those changes to 51 on the cap. And again, traffic study was submitted. Application was in compliance with the flume and the goals and objectives in the comprehensive plan. And the Planning Commission voted 9-0 to forward a recommendation of approval to the City Commission. I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have on the case, or the zoning district, or the proposal, density, whatever.
The committee was okay with the left turn concerns onto Old Shakertown Road, North 3rd Street?
The traffic study showed the traffic would, again, the basis of traffic study, they study what's there now and make some assumptions, that the traffic would split. There'd be 435 trips generated for approximately 62 townhomes. Those generate about 7 trips a day. And those trips would split. If you were coming out of the development on Old Shakertown, some would be going left, going to the Shakertown and turn left. A lot of the trips would be going right, heading back to town, going right. Some of the trips would go left, then turn right, and they made the same assumption that the same percentage would happen once the build-out occurs. There were left-hand turns coming out of sight, but the majority of the trips are going back into town. The concern was the trips that are coming back to the development in the afternoon, that are coming down the hill, that a portion of those are going to turn left to come back home.
Yeah.
But a big portion of them are going to turn left at the first way to get into Old Shakertown Road. That's the higher number.
Yeah.
And that concern was coming down the hill, there's potentially speeding and someone putting on their brakes and, someone possibly rear-ending another car. But the traffic engineer said, that those are enforcement issues, but as far as pure design, there's not enough impact there. And it didn't show that there'd be more wrecks, more crashes, or more problems, or more delay, that it'd be a similar situation that we see now. Just as he described, just possibly 1 or 2 more cars in the peak hour scenario that would occur. But most of the trips are going right, and most of the trips would be heading down Old Shakertown Road and making that way into town that way. But a good percentage would turn left. And Earl read the study, and I can't summarize any better than that. Showed very little impact, if at all, based on 51. It was initially studied for 62, and by lowering it to 51, it even lessens it by that much.
I'm just concerned about going down Old Shakertown Road to the end of it and make a turn to the left as folks are coming up over the hill or folks are coming in from Streamline. But you said it's not going to impact that, so that's good.
Well, it says that it'll be the same amount that would generally follow that route now
That's good.
And the assumption is if folks are going the right speed, the sight distance is accurate.
That's correct, right. It's not, you're not altering the sight distance, you're just increasing the number of cars. And what the engineer is demonstrating is that there's a reserve capacity on those intersections and on those roads, that this is consuming some of that reserve capacity, but it doesn't bump capacity in a way that you diminish the level of service for either Bergen Road or Old Shakertown Road. I think there is one movement that it could potentially impact it, and only at peak hour.
And that's going back south to Lexington Avenue and staging at the light if you're trying to go through or left.
Okay, then the other issue that I observed in studying this, as it's proposed right now, there's, I guess you say, one way in and one way out of this new development. There's not a separate way to get in or a separate way to get out.
Yeah. I don't think with 51 units that's an issue. I mean, if we're building a new subdivision street, the length, maybe 600 feet or 1,000 feet at far depth, but we really don't have real clear guidance in the zoning ordinance or the subregs on when you want a second entrance. But that's not that many units to have a single entrance in for just 51 units. At some point you have 100, 200, 300, 400 units, you want to start to have other means of ingress or egress, but 51 units is not really that dense. And I'm not sure what the option would have been to actually get out of the property.
Yeah. On the same road, on Old Shakertown Road.
Sure.
There's just one way in, one way out.
Sure.
And this area may not be wide enough across the front or not, but if you guys are okay with it, my job is to study it and to raise questions.
Yeah.
And that's one that came to my mind, is that there's just, because I looked at the property right beside it, which is a lot less dense, and there's 2 ways in and 2 ways out. Somebody's gonna be right next to them.
I mean, we've got apartment complexes that are a tad bit denser than this. I can think on the other side of town that really have one driveway in, one driveway out. They may have another street connection or a better street connection if they're fronting, but the actual complex themselves, I think we've got as many as 90 units at one development that just really has one driveway in and out. Perfect world, you have multiple entrances in and out, but 51's not a very dense subdivision. Again, it falls in that moderate density category. It's even below the 16 units.
But if I understood you correctly, the Planning and Zoning Commission voted
9-0 to forward a recommendation of approval.
Writing off that comment, we're to take action here. So you just expressed to us a change. That's not what we're looking at. So I guess we'd have to make sure that our city clerk has made that change before we vote on this, because we're looking at the old document.
Yeah, now that's what's a little tricky. You've got our actual record that came.
Mm-hmm.
This is what went to the Planning Commission, and as you know, development conditions sometimes evolve on the floor.
Okay.
So there was a little bit of that happened on the floor of the Planning Commission. The developer put this concept plan forward, and then it revised. So our minutes are what reflect those changes. We won't revise a staff report in that case, because that's the actual report that went to P&Z, and we just give you the record. That's the concept plan they submitted. They won't give us a new concept plan. It was basically just tweaked on the floor. Those are reflected in our minutes, and then we put that in our file, so down the road as the developer gets ready to start, we know it's limited to 51 units, and the concept plan has been revised. Basically just scratch all over mine, and that becomes the official concept plan.
And basically, you're asking us just to vote tonight on the zone change. Basically, right? That's what you're
The zone
asking for.
change and the conditions are connected.
Yeah.
And tonight's just the consensus to give your legal counsel an up or down vote at the next meeting, when you bring a reading formally to the body.
With that said, do I hear a motion?
I'll move to accept the approved zoning map amendment at 707 Old Shakertown Road.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion?
I would just like to say, for the record, I will be abstaining from this vote. I have a professional relationship with the entity developing this regarding a separate piece of property that could possibly be used for future development.
So noted. Any further discussion or comments? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, motion carries. Item 11, Mr. Scott, City Manager report.
Yes, sir. Mayor and Commission, just very briefly, I wanted to let you know that following our discussion of the preliminary budget, the night I made that presentation several weeks ago, and with all of you individually having questions and that we talked about since that time, Michelle and I are now at work in terms of putting together what will be the proposed budget that I will present to you on May 28th. A few changes will be included in that proposed budget. There are some technical corrections and others. Essentially, I think we'll be looking at the same sort of plan of action as we talked about in the preliminary budget, but that's coming, and we're sort of under the timeline to make all those changes, present it with a summary to you, a transmittal letter. On the 28th, you can still, of course, ask questions or make comments, certainly. It's not anticipated that you would make any decision on the 28th, but reserve your option to do that in June at the first and second readings, which is when we normally have that process considered and approved by the Commission.
And May 28th is our next, I'm sorry, next
5:30.
regular scheduled meeting, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay.
That's a Tuesday because of the holiday.
Yep. I wanted to clarify that, both for myself, my fellow commissioners, and anybody out there that wants to show up.
I need to let the commission know that I will not be here that evening, and I will proudly tell you why. Because my middle daughter, who graduated with a music education major, will be performing the next day at Carnegie Hall.
Good for her.
So
That's awesome.
continue on without me.
I'd like to see that myself.
Anything else, Mr. Scott?
Just to note that I will be requesting an executive session following our conclusion of business here tonight for the purpose of discussing personnel matters.
You're doing that in honor of Mr. Atkins, I know. We will move right on into Hear the Public. This is the public's opportunity to take 3 minutes at the podium about any subject that is not on tonight's agenda. Wilma, you've been silent for too long. Yeah, nice job there.
I have a comment on the preliminary budget as presented by Mr. Scott a couple of weeks ago. First of all, I appreciate that being made available to the public. This has to do with salaries, and a 2% increase for cost of living adjustment has been recommended, and that's on individual salaries. We have our lowest paid person, this was surprising to me, on the city, full-time person makes $24,000 a year, which is an embarrassing salary. That person at 2% will be getting a $480 raise. Our highest salary is the city manager. It's in excess of $130,000, and that salary will get $2,600 as a raise. Then the next raise is based again on those raises, so that exponentially your disparity between the lowest paid person on the board. I don't know why I'm out of breath because I haven't been up here for so long. Lowest paid person on the board and the highest, lowest paid person on the city salary scale, and the highest paid, the disparity continues to increase. A better way to do it is to take all of your salary amount, multiply that by the 2%, then divide it by the number of employees, and all the employees get the same amount. Because, and I don't know what that would be, it might be $1,000, have no idea. Because every time you go to the gas pump, it doesn't matter what your salary is, you're paying the same amount increase. Every time you buy a gallon of milk, the same thing. If your hot water heater goes out, it doesn't matter what your salary is, it's going to cost the same. So I just wanted to point out that your lowest paid person continues to be at the bottom of the scale, and that increase that we all pay at the gas pump now, which might be $5 or $6 difference when we're filling our gas tank. It's not. It's an irritation to all of us, but for some people, it's an actual problem on their income. So thank you for listening. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Wilma. We've missed you.
That was good, though. That's good. I enjoyed that.
Anyone else? Yes, sir.
This is more just a public announcement. I figure this is the best forum. The zoning ordinance second half is ready to roll out. And in a normal situation, it'd go to the planning commission and then would come to you guys. And Mr. Scott and I have been discussing how we kind of go forward with the second half of the zoning ordinance. As you know, it's going to involve a rewrite of the sign regulations, parking, landscape, districts. We're going to just sort of go for everything, I guess. There was an editorial in the paper about Airbnbs. And what's the solution? Well, we got a solution. So we're going forward with all the kind of changes that we need to do to modernize the book, streamline the book, and move forward. After some discussion with the city manager, I think we want to take a kind of public outreach approach. And I've talked with the chamber, and the first, I'm not sure the date just yet, but we're going to actually engage all the chamber membership, and we're going to get a fairly big room, and we're going to talk about signs in that kind of forum with business owners. Been talking with a lot of business owners, downtown business owners, one-on-one, especially on signs, the developers, the landscape folks, the surveyors, engineers, on all these different things that we're going to talk about with the second phase. It's going to be complicated. It may even get controversial. Just want to give you a heads up that we're ready to go with this. We're ready to bring it to the Planning Commission this month, but we're going to shoot for June. We might table the hearing to give us more time, but this will give the city staff time to review it, city attorney time to review it, other folks in the community. The draft is ready. Article 4 is literally laying in my office right now, which again will consolidate several articles, and that'll be district names, parking, landscape, signage, setbacks, floodplain, all those kind of things that you would naturally expect in the zoning ordinance. The first phase that you guys did was the easy stuff, as I mentioned. We're rewriting the whole book, uses, again, addressing Airbnbs, whatever, setback, signage, parking, landscape, and the district names. All those odd names that were adopted in 2004 are being proposed to go back to more traditional national uniform names like R1, R2, R3, R4. We're creating different districts that we currently don't have, and we're converting all the old districts to new districts, which is the most complicated element of the rewrite. So if you guys want to see an advanced copy, I can email you the draft so you guys can start studying it. The Planning Commission, though, have to sort of stay a little bit neutral on this. They are kind of the judge and jury when it lands in their forum. So we're not really sending them an advanced copy at this point. They're going to have a public hearing and hear all the evidence to make a decision. You guys as a legislative body could study this for months if you want to, give me feedback and comments, but the Planning Commission really needs to take a staff proposal and hear public comments and then tweak it from there. So that's kind of the plan. But we're going to go kind of get out on the road and meet with different groups, starting with the chamber membership. And Mr. Jewell said he's going to personally invite all the folks, and we're going to get a pretty big room and start with signs in that forum and just invite everyone one day and walk them through the entire document, starting with signs and parking. And if you guys have any comments, I'd be glad to, you guys can meet me or call me, and if you want to see the draft, I can get it emailed out to everyone ahead of time so you guys can start to study on it.
Thanks, sir.
That was more for the paper.
Yes, sir, young man. Introduce yourself, please.
I'm Michael McGee, and I live in Colonial Heights. I just want to address an issue that when I'm trying to pull out in the left, going into town, that people are making wide right turns and almost hitting my vehicle, and I've seen several others as well. And there's like 3 lanes, I would say. So one to pull in, one to pull out, either to the right, and one so you can turn left or go straight into the gas station. And I believe that there's painted stripes and turning signals that people will slow down. Sorry, I don't like speaking in front of crowds, but that they would slow down and turn more cautiously into the neighborhood where the sidewalks where pedestrians walk around. So.
Okay, thank you, sir. So noted. Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll move right into commissioner comments. Anyone?
I have a commissioner question or two.
Go ahead.
These are probably for John. Want to check on the status of the 2nd Street Bridge and the water treatment park.
That's on our agenda, isn't
Is it?
it? 2nd Street.
Yeah, John will give an update, I think, on the 2nd Street Bridge. There'll be a
Okay.
change order.
December 15th.
Request on that. The Water Plant Park, we've got started on finishing up the foundation. We put some stone in there, Public Works did that, and we'll be laying that out, weather permitting, this week, and then beginning installation of the footings and minor components prior to finished concrete work, and then we'll plumb it up. That's
All right.
a joint effort between, I guess, all of us, right, John? So,
Weather permitting, I understand, so. All right, thank you.
Anyone else?
I just wanted to make sure that we announce there's a ribbon cutting tomorrow for the Margaret D. Marshall Elementary School at KSD campus. It's their new elementary school that they have built. Starts at 4 o'clock, and they will be giving tours from 4:45 to 6 p.m. I cannot go to that.
That's
so
at 4?
Someone else
Yeah,
can
4.
attend.
Okay. Mr. Atkins, anything?
I can't think of anything.
You and I and Commissioner Terry were at a meeting this morning with a gentleman named Brad Thomas. I don't know, I was thoroughly impressed to the extent that I'm going to try to get him back here so that we can have a real hearing for a lot more people than were there this morning. I'm going to guess there's, what, 20, 25 there?
Yeah.
There needs to be 150 there. And so let's stay tuned on that one.
You'll make it open for the public?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
More the merrier.
That'd be good.
Anything else?
Well, we didn't honor any of our bright youth this meeting like we've done in other meetings, but I will give a shout out to the ladies that organized the Jenny Carroll 5K, which is a fundraiser for Backpack for Kids. So it kind of falls in some of the line of what this community does regularly, and that's works hard for other people. But in addition, I let the police department get away, but Tony's still here. With all those things they do that are kind of risking their lives, we appreciate you showing up to take care of the streets for an event like this. There's 362 runners there, and so it was well done, and it covered a lot of streets and shut them down for quite a while, and they appreciate it, not we. I was involved, but I didn't organize it.
Chief, I think one time you told me that takes about a dozen officers.
Well, we had a little twist this week with Center was holding a seminar that we found out on Thursday down at the Norton Center. And so we had a little extra twist there, but we had about 16 guys and gals to working on that detail for this weekend.
Yeah, so that's a real undertaking for our police department. 'Cause a lot of guys, this is a Saturday morning deal, and they're out early doing their thing.
Well, we also should compliment our police department on the way they went charging into the school in spite of the dangers that may have existed and resolved an issue very quietly and very calmly.
Well, and I will comment on that if I may. At a debrief this afternoon, it was concluded that it was handled as professionally and appropriately as possible. And a great deal of that credit goes to our police chief, Chief Gray. So, well done.
We had the assistance with, Chief Flugem was very instrumental in helping us out on that detail last Thursday. It was a great coordinated effort. It resolved itself very well.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sad you had to do it, but man.
Our farmers market is up and going
You
at
got it.
Constitution Square. It's getting bigger every week, more and more things available every week, and it's fabulous. I've been there every Saturday. Try to go every Saturday the whole summer. So.
Anything else? We'll move right on into item 12, which is payment of the bills. Do I hear a motion?
I move for approval of the bill list in the amount of $926,372.81.
Thank you, Commissioner Terry, and second by Commissioner Cottle. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Item 13 is resolution number 2019-05-13-01. This is a reimbursement resolution. Ms. Gosser, the floor is yours.
The resolution you have before you is a basic resolution like we do on all our buildings that we get ready to build, our big projects. We do a reimbursement resolution so that anything that we have to pay up front, we can get reimbursed from loans that we're going to get in the future.
Also moved to passing the resolution 2019-05-1301 as presented.
Thank you, Commissioner Atkins. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Terry. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Item 14 will be resolution number 2019-05-13-02. This is a paving list from our city engineer, Mr. John Castle.
Evening, Mayor, Commissioners.
Evening.
For the several items I've got to discuss with you, first is ask for approval for this resolution just to proceed with the paving list work. I can go over it, but do you have any questions about the individual streets?
Any questions for Mr. Castle?
We have a total of $290,000 to spend, and we're using the Kentucky State Price contract, $83 a ton. We'll do as much as we can with that list, and if we don't complete everything on that list, we'll pick it up on the fall paving list. And if we have some money left over, we've got some streets that didn't quite make this list that we can easily throw in there and move on from there. So have a little leeway there, and we'll do the best we can with it. But that'll be starting. We're already working with Allen Construction, scheduling it, and this stuff should be done before the end of the fiscal year.
Do I hear a motion?
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Jim.
I hear a motion from Commissioner Sears and a second by Commissioner Cottle.
That's exactly what you heard.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Thank you, gentlemen. Item 15, Resolution 2019-05-13-03, Second Street change order and project update. There you go, Commissioner Cottle.
Got you.
The Second Street Bridge is doing real well. They've placed the beams for the vehicular bridge part of it last Monday. They'll be setting the beams for the pedestrian bridge this coming Thursday. And once you see those in place, you'll really see the area shaping up quite a bit. There'll be a lot of grading and things to do after that partly the contractor's doing it, partly Public Works will be doing it. And we'll be working with the Beautification Committee on some of the approaches for the sidewalks and some plantings afterwards and that sort of thing. But the issue here is the change order. What happened was the original design ideas had the pedestrian bridge closer to the vehicular bridge, but once the design phase of the design build project was entered into, they ran into more utilities underground and overhead than was expected, and some other issues. So basically, they had to move it farther downstream, which the creek widened as you went farther down. The bank was laid farther back. So the beam went from being 52 feet to 80 feet. And part of the issue with the increase in cost there is not just, you can't just make it longer and stretch it like a rubber band. As you add to the length, you're adding weight that adds, it's a whole bunch of engineering stuff I won't bore you with, but it makes it a bigger, stronger beam is required, and then they need a bigger crane to install it all. And also they need to have extra controls because of the overhead utility wires through the three-phase electricity going through there. So they didn't want to risk using an undersized crane and any issues that might happen if they can't control the beams completely while they're placing them. So we ask for that you accept the change order so we can proceed with the work.
Do I hear a motion to that effect?
I'll move to approve this change order to the Second Street Bridge Project in the amount of $26,841.32.
Thank you, Commissioner Atkins. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Sears. All in favor of the motion of accepting the resolution?
Can I ask a question real quick?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes,
That's all
sir.
right. That's okay. So that's coming along nice, and that new pedestrian bridge will be spilling into our newly named park, Smith Park. And as we sometimes see, and maybe something to think about down the road, if there's any overrun on asphalt, that trail's getting a little beat up there. Is that a possibility?
Well, as part of what we're doing there, we're probably going to try to dress up some of it that was affected by the construction. So close to the road, there'll be some of it dressed up. And then the approaches we're putting in are probably going to be concrete. The reason for that is there's a little bit of a slope there. Sure. It'll have a good broom finish. It'll make it a little bit easier for wheelchair folks to be able to make it in and around that area. It won't be as slick as some of the blacktop might have been if we tried to use that instead of concrete on those approaches. But yeah, we're looking at some things to dress up and make the area look a little bit better on both sides.
And then a question for maybe the city manager and yourself to think about is sometimes when you have asphalt and have your machines there, maybe looking at that additional cost to take that trail and clean it up all the way through the park. It's been there for a long time, so I just want to plant that seed. Since you already have the equipment there, it might be cheaper to do it now than next year.
Well, the only thing I can throw in there is that the equipment they'll be using for most of the work is going to be a road-sized paver. And to do those trails and stuff, you'd be using something a lot smaller, narrower, or doing it by hand. So we can consider that addition there to help out and everything. If the money's available and everybody's agreeable to doing that, we can proceed on that. But just with the equipment, the way the guy's set up right now, it's not like he can just take it over there and start paving the trails. It's going to be too big.
Sure, I understand. Michelle's bursting to comment. No? Okay.
We haven't done a budget amendment for this. That item, that fund only has a minimum amount of spending out of it. And so we either need to do a budget amendment before you pass this resolution, one, or John needs to agree to take that money out of the paving list.
No, with this here, what we're looking at is just the change order for the beams. For your request, I'm sorry if I led you to believe that we would do that work as part of this project. No, we'd have to look at doing it through other funding sources.
But what we're saying is we have to stay within our budget of the whole fund.
Right.
And in order to do that with what because we're going to finish 2nd Street in this fiscal year, bridge, hopefully, is we either have to make a budget amendment before you pass that resolution, or you have to agree to take it out of your street paving.
Right, which is what she is saying is that the funds available for the spring paving list are going to be slightly smaller to compensate for this change order necessarily.
Oh. This change order is not in the budget?
No, all we're asking for the change order is just to deal with the increase in cost due to the beam changes. And so additional paving and stuff would be coming out of a different source.
Well, yeah, that's what we're saying. It all comes out of the same fund. So, we'll have to reduce the paving list or wait. If we're going to do a budget amendment, we'll have to wait to do this resolution. You can't do a resolution before the budget amendment's done.
So,
Yeah, we're confused.
Who's on first?
We will work with John. The correct thing to do is not, I wouldn't suggest amending the budget. We'd suggest reducing the paving list to compensate for the bridge construction.
And normally that's what we would do.
Correct. That's the right thing to do, and that's what we would suggest in this case. Okay. So passing it, we would just understand instead of having the balance of $290,000, it'd be $290,000 minus the $26,000, which is $264,000 roughly left for paving, which should narrow his wiggle room that he spoke about whenever he was talking about the paving list until we get to July and that turns over.
got you.
Good with that?
Clear as mud, yeah.
Okay.
So do you need action?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we've got a motion.
Staff is requesting the change order be approved by the commission with the acknowledgement that the funding for the change order will come from a reduction in the paving list allocation. So instead of $290,000, we'll offset the expense of the change order with the paving funds.
I move what Earl said.
We have a
We already
motion
have
to
the
what
motion,
Earl
don't we?
said. Is there a second to what Earl said?
Did you make that motion
He
originally?
just-
We already had a motion, I
Yeah,
said.
you had a motion for
Okay.
Didn't you make that motion?
Right, is that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
City clerk?
So we
Yeah.
already had a motion.
But he added what Earl said.
So we'll.
I didn't know if we needed to make that amendment or not, but
I think amending it, there's nothing wrong with amending it to include how you're going to offset the expense of the change order in this case.
Then let me go back to Mr. Atkins. Are you okay with that amendment?
Yeah.
Okay, we have that
Yes.
motion, and who seconded it?
Second.
And you're good with that, too? Any further discussion? All in
what I-
favor of the motion and the amendment, say aye.
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 Opposed, like sign. Thank you. Item 16 is Resolution 2019-05-13-04. This is a streetlight pole bid acceptance.
A little bit easier. All we're asking is for y'all to approve the bid. We had a single bid. It was a decent price from Graybar. What we've done is we're getting the 16 lights that are going to be put up on Main Street for part of the Streetscape project. That contract and everything was set up that we were going to provide the light poles. The city was going to provide the light poles rather than the contractor buying them and providing them through their contract. So we provide it to them, they install it. So this is the bid for those poles. We've got 16 total. We're going to be saving 2 of them that will be going up as part of the fire station construction, and they'll be just stored in the meantime, but the other 14 will be installed in the coming month.
Is there a motion?
I move for approval of Resolution 2019-05-1304.
Thank you, Commissioner Terry. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Cottle.
Is this in the budget?
Yeah, I was going to ask that, too.
Well, since the last one, what?
It's
is
part
it?
of the
This is in the
streetscape
streetscape.
project. Yes.
But it's in that,
Total cost of that project, yes.
all right.
It's an
Now,
element of it.
these poles, I'm assuming, are going to be same as the
Yes.
other poles.
They're
correct?
matching the existing. This
Okay.
is almost the same supplier.
No dumb question, but sorry,
No,
had to
no.
do it. Any further questions or comments? If not, Chair will call for the motion. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Item 17 will be the Streetscape project update. Again, Mr. Castle.
The streetscape work that's being done out here, starting during the winter like it was and everything, the Bluegrass Contracting, general contractor Mike Lawhorn doing the electrical and the demo, they've done exceptional work considering the weather conditions they've had. Brad Stamper, the superintendent for Bluegrass Contracting, impressed me with the work they did at the Firehouse Number 1 on the paving they did for us down there during the winter also, but also up here. Been able to troubleshoot through a lot of difficulties that have arisen just because of having to do a lot of construction in a very heavily constructed area. You've been working in this area for 200 years, lots of stuff underground. So anything from exposing utility lines to ancient paving bricks that were, I've been told, were some of the original cobblestones and stuff, but they're common all over the place around here. Every time you start digging, you run into them. So the guys did a real good job in what they've been doing out here, working pretty safe, doing the best they can to coordinate with the tenants and people passing around. But for the most part, just real quick, the demo on the south side of the street's complete from 5th Street up here to 4th Street. They're not going to start on the north side over here until after the Brass Band Festival. The goal for the south side then is they were going to have the concrete sidewalk, concrete verge, the granite, and the sodding in place, and it'll look pretty decent in time for Memorial Day and or the Brass Band Festival on the south side before we start doing anything on the north side. That said, the electrical, they might proceed on with some underground work, and they might even start setting some poles, but for the most part, it'll be cleaned up and look a lot nicer than it does right now. after the Brass Band Festival. Then we'll start doing the demo on the north side of the street, starting up here close to 4th. And we'll be working from there down to City Hall, doing the same sort of work, and then the addition of the patio in front of the Davis building. So things are going pretty good. I don't think we could have done it much faster than the guys have been doing it. So if there's any other questions, I can entertain those.
What's it take to get a beveled edge put on this granite curb?
The Public Works guys will be doing that pretty shortly after the contractor gets done. We did it last time, we'll be doing it again this time.
Including on 3rd Street, which has not been done.
Well, all the new granite that we're putting in right now, we'll be doing, and if it needs to be done on 3rd Street, yeah, we'll be doing that.
Thank
too.
you.
Yeah, we have had some comments about, one lady said that she's replaced 2 tires because of the sharpness of the granite on the sidewalls of the tires. So we're working on it.
And I know that, and Earl and I talked about this briefly, if you stand up here at 4th Street and look down, it's not a straight sidewalk. Why is that?
The one place down there, Speedway, according to on the plans and stuff, there was a section where the contractor was pretty much, they were trying to go straight from the edge of an existing curb to the edge of another existing curb. And a lot of that was partly obscured by the landscaping and planning back when it was designed and drawn up. So when they got in there, they did their excavation, they went from point to point, and it wasn't noticed until after the concrete was set that that one little section down there, it was 6 inches out of line. So unfortunately, if you're an engineer or a surveyor and looking down that line, you can see the line pretty quick. Most people walking down through there after the plantings are back in place and stuff, they'll have to be looking for it to see, especially when the grass from the side starts spreading over a little bit. So it's one of those things.
Been successful in educating these workers that we're trying to be a trash-free city?
Well, I've seen a lot messier projects than this one. And that's why we didn't think that much to say much to them before, because it wasn't as bad as it could have been. And a lot of times we could be walking by, something wasn't there, and then I walk by a few minutes later and something is there. Did the contractor drop it? Did a passing car throw it over there? We don't know. And some of the guys were pretty diligent about there cleaning up after themselves. Other guys, they're tired at the end of the day and they're thinking about getting home to their family. So sometimes things get overlooked. But for the most part, the stuff will be picked up as much as we can notice and see and take care of. And some of the rubble things are kind of an issue too, the big chunks of granite and things like that. Don't want to leave those in there for somebody to come in later on and try to drive a sign into or dig to put in a utility line. So they're trying to clean things up as much as they can within reason for a construction site.
Thank you, sir. Item 18 will be resolution number 2019-05-13-05. This is the HDR sewer contract amendment. Mr. Coffey.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. As we have gone through the EDA grant on the water side, we've come into close relationships again with some of the industries, and as we went through that process, in addition to the water, a request is developed to consider expanding the sewer. What you have in front of you is a amendment to the existing sanitary sewer contract with HDR, which expands the scope to include investigation of the trunk line that serves the industrial area along Lebanon Road, particularly west of Stewart's Lane, extending all the way to the Corporate Drive watershed. This is a project identified in a project profile that we had submitted to the Division of Water. It's one of maybe 7 that we have up there, I think. And staff at this time, as a result of the feedback from some of the industries and some of their expansion plans, is recommending to the Commission that you go ahead and engage in this process. The funding for it would come from the funding for this initial work would come from the project funds that will be utilized over the next year, but ultimately, there will be probably some negotiations with the industries and rates and things like that. So final construction cost would be to be determined where the source of that would come from. Maybe even another EDA grant application would be on the horizon, certain appropriate, since jobs are tied to the expansion. And so staff is not suggesting that we have a plan on how to pay for the total construction cost today, but yet we are suggesting that it'd be wise for the commission to go ahead and proceed with the planning and development of the contract documents and the conceptual plan for the upsizing so that a final cost can be achieved and so that funding could be more accessible.
So this splits off of a 15, well, I guess we really ought to have a motion first, shouldn't we? Do I hear a motion?
I'll move for approval of Resolution 2019-051305.
Thank you, Commissioner Terry. How about a second?
Second.
Commissioner Atkins, thank you. Discussion?
Sure, going to make a comment.
So this splits off of a 15-inch line, Earl?
Currently, it does. Well, where we are suggesting the beginning of this project is the connection of the 12 and the 15, where those come together. I think that is a 24-inch under the railroad tracks today. And so what you may end up doing is extending all the way back to there. And that's one of those things where we need to get into the engineering, do some site surveying, and really get into the capacity. Slope will affect capacity. You won't know that till you do your field surveying. This is very old parts of the system and put in at different stages. So you need to look and reinvestigate what the capacity is and then get into the conceptual design and go from there. But at this time, staff is requesting that we add that to HDR's work and that they're active in the sewer system today. This would be amendment number 2 to their original wastewater system planning contract.
Any further questions?
Yeah, so you said this is a look at, right? The engineering firm's being hired to kind of tell us where we need to go?
Well, that's part 1 of the contract, but this contract would also enable them, if we authorize them to continue into final design and full contract documents. City staff is suggesting that we would do resident inspection if it did go to construction, which we would anticipate that happening. We don't know what the schedule would that be for that work, but again, there would be several steps of discussions before funding would be fully assembled, and again, you'd probably apply for an EDA grant and go through that process.
That makes more sense to me. I think that we all are looking in here and you're talking about a look at, but you had things itemized here as construction administration, and I thought it's kind of a cart before the horse if all we're doing is looking at it. So this would continue on if we move forward.
Correct. If ultimately that is correct, and you would do a preliminary engineering report and investigation and begin the initial design, which needs to be designed anyway. Again, that's one of your long-term projects that we need to do. So ultimately, the timing for the design it's appropriate in that you do have active industrial requests for the service increase.
Good question.
Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, Chair will call the question. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Item 19. This will be the second reading of ordinance number 1928. This will be the zone change at 100 Fox Harbor Drive. Madam Clerk, you want to read this?
Got to raise your right hand.
This is an ordinance changing the zone from GRB, General Residential Small Lot, to HC, Highway Commercial, for approximately 0.362 acres, more or less, of real property located at 100 Fox Harbor Drive in the city of Danville.
Do you hear a motion? I'm sorry. Do we need a motion? Just
No, a motion. Yes.
a motion?
And roll
Do
call.
I hear a motion?
I move for approval of second reading of ordinance 1928.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Cottle. Any discussion about it? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Commissioner Atkins?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Terry?
Yes.
Mayor Paris?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Cottle?
Yes.
Commissioner Saris?
Yes.
Seeing that there's no other business to come before us other than executive session, I would entertain a motion that we move into executive session.
I would make the motion, we go into executive session to discuss personnel pursuant to KRS 61810-1F.
Thank you, Commissioner Cardle. Is there a second?
Rick will second it.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Sears.
Go.
The drama's overwhelming here. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, like sign. We're in executive session. Everybody have a nice evening.
I move we go back into regular session.
Is there a second?
Second.
And a second. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. We're in regular session.
We would ask that you hire Nina Wesley to the position of Code Enforcement Officer.
So move.
Motion
Second.
made and seconded. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign.
We would ask that you hire Austin Ray to the position of 911 telecommunicator with usual probationary measures.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We would ask, staff would ask that you hire Josh Owens and Dakota Rakes to the position of police officer with usual probationary measures.
So moved.
Motion
Second.
made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Next, we would ask that you hire Matthew Owens to the position of IT technician or network technician with the usual probationary measures.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We would ask that you hire Brittany Kaufman to the position of secretary with the usual probationary measures.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And lastly, we would ask that you hire Jessica Cheatham to the position of administrative assistant with the usual probationary measures.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Anything else, Madam Clerk?
Anybody else
Madam
need a
HR?
job? Anybody looking for work?
You moved it, we sent Michelle out for pizza. What'd you say?
If, that's personal servitude. You can't do that.
I
It's a-
move, do we already have a motion to adjourn?
No, sir, but we'll entertain one.
I'll give one.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Aye.